Hey guys, this is Canadian here. Welcome to part 3 of my Plasmatech PVP guide. If you haven't watched the other two parts of the video of the series, you might want to check them out first. But the first two parts there, I covered the utilities of the class and the spec, and as well as the DPS rotation and how some of those abilities are used in like a PvP context. So in part 3, we're going to cover gearing. What I'm going to cover more specifically in this one here is what optimal stats you're looking for, so like kind of targets you want to hit. I'll go over which armorings, barrels, mods, enhancements are the best. I'll talk a little about the different sets out there and the bonuses, and what's best for Plasmatech. I'll cover tacticals and just lightly cover stims as well here. Now the big thing with gearing in PvP is there's no correct answer on what's best. There's going to be different things that you're going to need, so you have to kind of tailor how you build your gear up based on your playstyle requirements. So just a little something to know is I based all this information on what I could find at the time here. So it's likely if anyone's watching this well in the future here, some of this information might be outdated. This was specific to patch 6.0.2. And I'll make sure to include links to all the information and sources that I used for this video here. So what I'll cover first is lightly touch on hit rating and alacrity here. Now in PvP, hit and alacrity aren't terribly useful. That's more of a PvE thing. In PvE, you need like 110%, so hit rating is a lot more important, and alacrity plays a bigger role because you have a much more reliable amount of uptime on a target because you'll have a tank just holding a high health mobs in place for you. So you can just pound on them and not worry so much. But in PvP, you don't have that guarantee that you're always going to be attacking something. You're always going to be pushing a button because there's going to be situations where you're CC'd or whatever you're trying to kill is just out of range or whatever. So you can't reliably lean on alacrity and builds in PvP, at least for Plasmatech. So if you wanted to like maximize damage, you could, in theory, and this wouldn't be a wrong answer, wrong choice here. You could run with absolutely no hit rating and no alacrity, so you'd just be basically going into crit and mastery at that point. So if you just wanted to get as big a hit as possible in PvP, and that's totally a legit gearing strategy, you could get away with it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, like why alacrity is good in PvE. In PvP, like the engagements you have are usually pretty short. Usually, an engagement is somebody's going to be making a checkmate style move within like the first 20-30 seconds of a fight, the high uptime on targets isn't guaranteed. So like if you're only going to be able to get a few global cooldowns in, if you're going to hit someone, you want to make those hits as big as possible. Now, for hit rating, for Plasmatech, the reason you can get away with having 0 hit rating is because all the damage, well, at 95% of it is all tech damage, which will not miss. The only thing you could actually use the 5% hit for in PvP would just be so your high impact bolt hits, because that's the only thing that's weapon damage, the only thing that isn't tech damage. So you really don't need the hit that much. If you do end up gearing your character in kind of like a dual role, like you might use this gear set for PvE as well, you might want to actually just have the 5% hit in there, or if you plan on swapping out specs to tactics, having the extra hit for tactics is actually really important in PvP because it's a much higher percentage of your damage, high impact bolt anyway. Okay, so when it comes to alacrity, generally your stat budget is going to be high. You're going to have more stat budget than you know what to do with, so you got flexibility here. And in PvP, you don't need the 110 hit percentage there, so you could go with alacrity in PvP, and it would be a safe choice. So if you wanted to go with the kind of bare minimum threshold, you could go with a 1213 rating, and that would give you a 1.4 second global cooldown, and with your stat budget, that's easily achievable. Now, if you want a 1.3 second global cooldown, that's where you start sacrificing tertiary stats you really don't want to, like crit or I guess mastery as well. It's kind of a too high of a price to pay just to get to that global cooldown because, again, for PvP, crit is much more valuable. Now, there's some classes, such as an example like telekinetic sages right now. They have some baked-in goodies into their spec so that they get like an alacrity buff baked in, so they don't need as much of the stat point to reach that 1.3 second global cooldown, and there's some other specs in the game that are similar. But for Plasmatech, you don't have any of that bonus, so really to go for that 1.3 second global cooldown, not worth it, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to critical hits, there is a soft cap. There is diminishing returns. There is a point where critical points aren't so good anymore. And that starts to occur at 2,820 rating here, and you can see the graph. The red line's crit, and you can see at some point at the 2800 range here, it starts to fall off, and this blue line here, mastery, starts to become better because mastery will increase power just a little bit as well as crit. So you get that little bigger punch when it does crit. So it's something interesting to note with this blue line here is the more mastery you have, the better it becomes. And that's almost endless. You won't hit a stat budget that's greater than that. So, and that green line on this graph, just power, you can see it's pretty much worthless for the most part until crit gets to such a high value that power becomes a little bit better. But at that point, mastery is still better. So there's no reason you would ever stack power. Never. So, and with your the stat budget that you have for PvP, it's a little higher, so you'll find it might be possible you'll hit that soft cap, so you'll need to think about changing some things over to mastery just because the crit isn't as valuable anymore. So when it comes to armorings and barrels here, it's pretty simple. You just want the one that gives you the highest mastery, and it'll usually have the least amount of endurance on it. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, sometimes you can get like a really good roll on an amplifier on some mods, and or some armorings and barrels, and you may, if you're budget conscious, like you don't want to spend too much money re-rolling amplifiers all the time, you may go with a suboptimal armoring or barrel that just has like a little bit less mastery, but it has like the amplifier you want, so it might be worth it. It's not that much of a mastery loss in most cases, only like a couple stat points here and there, but to get those really good rolls, that's really hard sometimes. And for amplifiers, your best one is Tech Wizardry by far. 95% of the damage you deal as Plasmatech is tech damage, so that's just like a no-brainer, and periodic intensity is like a number 2. And if you do also use the same gear set for tactics, Tech Wizardry is also the best. Okay, so when it comes to best in slot mods, this is where things get kind of interesting, and I thought it would make more sense if I just kind of showed you the spreadsheet here. So what you're looking at is these lethal superior mods with the R and the number. You can see they have a stat pool budget, and that's just basically the two numbers added together here, but you'll notice some have a higher stat budget within their own families here. So if you're looking at probably the best mod to use, you're probably looking at number 2. So superior mod ADR2 is being your best bet. And you have the other ones here where if you look at these other categories like the AR series or just the BR series, like the stat pools are significantly smaller, so you'll get more bang for your buck with the R series. So this enhancement, the same deal as basically the mods. You have some that have higher stat pools within their own family, so you generally want to go with the one that can yield you the highest stat pool. So in the case of, in most cases here, if you're needing critical enhancements, you'll look at the stat pools here, and get that little thing to go away here. Yeah, so generally 18 or 19, if you can get your hands on one of those, that'll be your best in slot. And for alacrity, it's the same deal. 18 and 19 is your best bet. And if you are going to stack some initiative, some accuracy, the initiative enhancement 19 is probably your best bet there again. Okay, so when it comes to your implants, your earpiece, your relics, your crystal, these are pretty straightforward. You don't have a lot of choices. It's just a stat pools for your implants and earpieces. The best ones you can get is just anything Shawtech. Basically, that's going to be your best bet. And for your crystal, you're going to have to like figure out what you're going to need to balance out your stats. So if you're under the soft cap, you're going to want a crit crystal, and if you're over, you're going to want to stack a mastery crystal. And for relics right now, probably your best bet is to go with the tried and tested relic of focus retribution and serendipitous assault. Mastery is always good, and the crit relic you could also use, and that would be fine. You'll find that sometimes, like when it does proc, it'll put you like way over the crit soft cap. So power might be a little bit better, but I'll leave that one up to you. But so far, it seems like the little oomph from power is actually not that bad. Okay, so your first set here, Meteor Brawler. This is your best in slot. There's some pretty sweet bonuses that start stacking up for Plasmatech with this set, and it's a lot better for Plasmatech than it is for Tactics, and I'll show you why later. Now, because of this is your best in slot spec, I'll spend a bit of time talking about it, because this is going to be what everyone should be using right now, if you're damage focused anyway. So 2-piece bonus, not that interesting. The 4-piece bonus is really nice. It increases the damage you deal by 10% for 15 seconds, and that occurs every 30 seconds. So that's a very reliable bonus to have. And the 6-piece bonus is just amazing. This thing is completely insane. If you could get those perfect situations lined up, it can hit so hard. Now to talk a little bit about stacking, like the Ironfall buff you get once you activate your battle focus here. You have to really prioritize getting that up to your full 7 stacks, and in PvP it's not always that easy to do. You might find yourself getting CC'd, or the things that you need to attack to build your 7 stacks up are out of range, so it's entirely possible you don't get your full 7 stacks, and that really hurts your damage. So to optimally use it, you ideally, before you pop your battle focus, make sure your dots are up. So if you have a bunch of people there, make sure all your dots are ticking on everybody before you activate battle focus. Now the Ironfall AoE, that when it does explode, has a very small radius. It's just 5 meters. And just to give you an example of how close you have to be for that, typical melee range is 4 meters. So you pretty much have to be standing right next to them for this to actually damage them. And you'll find it's you think you're standing close enough to attack someone, and it blows up, and you can see they're totally fine and miss them. So in PvP, it's not as easy as you think. I hear horror stories of Plasmatech just running around blowing people up, and it's not as easy as some people would make you think. Now the second half of the 6-piece bonus is when your Ironfall does explode. Your abilities cost 75% less energy for 20 seconds. So basically, what that means is you can mash nuke and it's free damage. It doesn't cost you anything to use it. So it's kind of a nice secondary thing. So this set is by far the best. It overshadows everything else. Now the 6-piece bonus. In the perfect situation where the stars align, everything works out, you can hit people for over 100k damage as an AoE, which is completely insane. And you'll see people on the forums complaining about how hard this hits, but there's a lot of things that have to go your way to make that kind of a hit possible, and you're going to find, on average, when you're using this set, you're going to be hitting for closer to the 60 to 65k range, which is a lot more manageable for a lot of people. But those 100ks are out there. I've managed it only once myself, in just like an actual real-world PvP situation, and not a stage duel or something like that. So just a couple of the bonuses that all stack up to make you hit ridiculously hard here. You're going to be using the 100% critical hit tactical. You'll get a 5% damage bonus as well from Plasmatech being on the target. You're going to need both relics to be proccing and up when this thing explodes. Whatever you're going to hit with that explosion, with your Ironfall explosion, all those targets have to be debuffed completely for max damage. And just a couple of the things that all stack to give you some pretty sweet damage here. When this thing goes off, you want to make sure you coordinate your shock strike so that When it explodes, your 10% damage from your 4-piece bonus is up. You also get another 10% damage when you have 5 stacks of your power yield up. So it's going to require a little bit of foresight because you're going to need to get hit to get up to those 5 stacks. So you may not want to pop your battle focus right away. You want to make sure you get your ducks in a row here before you start popping that. Now, after you Ion Wave targets, they get a debuff that applies 10% more AoE damage, and Ion Fall Explosion is AoE, so you'll get an additional 10% there. And if whatever you're trying to hit with your explosion is below 30% max health, you get an additional 10% damage from that as well. So if you can see how just all these bonuses, when you start adding them all up, it's pretty nuts. Like this hits probably harder than it should. I don't know if BioWare's really balances because Tactics does hit pretty hard with this thing too, but not as hard as Plasmatech, that's for sure. Now, I did mention it earlier, but with this set in PvP, you really want to prioritize getting your 7 stacks of Ion Fall up as quickly as possible, because it's entirely possible that you may not be in total control of how quickly or getting those stacks up. So while you're in control of your character, like if you're not CC'd, you want to get as many of those stacks up as possible. So when you pop your battle focus, you want to make sure that that's your first priority, is getting 7 stacks up, because it is possible to shut this set down. Most people don't understand how this set works, so they don't know how to counter it, but you do want to be aware that the competent PvPers who do understand the mechanics know that as soon as they see battle focus get popped, they understand you're absolutely lethal, so they want to CC you, and make sure you stay CC'd, because it limits the amount of time you can build those 7 stacks. And yeah, that's the first thing that they can do to kill your damage right there, or at least the explosion, is to prevent the stacks building up, because then it doesn't hit nearly as hard and those bonuses don't go nearly as far. So the quickest way you can build stacks is to use Artillery Blitz, because every tick of Artillery Blitz actually adds a stack. So if you're looking at the quickest possible way to build stacks, just use Artillery Blitz. Even if it's on one person, that's totally fine, because that'll build your 7 stacks up right away. So you can also use other abilities to build it as well, but again, it just takes time, and time is precious, because you only have 15 seconds. So you really have to build those up, and there's a potential you could be CC'd for 13 of those seconds. Yeah, like I said, getting the 7 stacks up, crucially important for max damage. Now, something that you can do is you can click off your battle focus. So if you've built your 7 stacks up, you've got your debuffs up, and you see an opportunity to blow people up, you can run into the middle of them and just, like, for example, use your AoE stun, position yourself correctly, and you can click off your battle focus, and that'll cause the explosion. So if you see an optimal time to use it, sometimes it's worth cutting off your battle focus early, because you know you're going to nuke a bunch of people really hard. Okay, so the next set to talk about here, I just wanted to kind of mention this one, because this was being used by a lot of people before it got nerfed. So I'll just mention this one here and maybe why some people picked it, but it's not really worth it now. But before the set got nerfed in 6.0.1, it wasn't rate limited. So in theory, as long as you had the 6-piece bonus, and as long as you were just continuously getting hit, there was no rate limit. So you would just have permanent uptime on your battle focus, which was ridiculous when you combined it with some of the tacticals for Plasmatech. So if you could imagine a Plasmatech with permanent 100% crit, like literally everything crits, like that's insane. So yeah, it did get nerfed. So down Meteor Brawler is your best in slot, but beforehand, I like to call it the Price is Right set, but before it got nerfed, this was best in slot. So the 4-piece bonus kind of sucks. 10% damage reduction, I mean, it's not nothing. It's pretty nice, but it's only active when battle focus is up. So 15 seconds basically every minute and a half, you have 10% damage reduction. And when you think of it that way, it sucks. If you compare the Meteor Brawler 4-piece bonus, like 10% damage for 15 seconds every 30 seconds, like holy shit, that's way better. And the 6-piece bonus, It's not good. It's entirely reliant on getting hit, and that's when your power yield is up too. So your power yield has, if you take the utility, it's up for 30 seconds as long as you keep getting hit, and it's a 1-minute cooldown. So it's a bit reliant on getting hit in a very short window. And let's just assume a perfect situation where you're getting tunneled, or you're just always taking dot damage or something, just always getting hit. And when your power yield is up, it's only going to reduce it by being a very generous 30 seconds here. In real world practices, you're not going to see it reduce it by that much. It's going to be a lot less. So it's only reducing a 2-minute cooldown to it. Just to be generous, let's say down to 1 minute and 30 seconds. So not that great considering when you look at the 6-piece bonus for Meteor Brawler here. Meteor Brawler's a no-brainer. Bioware did a pretty shitty job of balancing the sets, and they didn't really give us any choices here. Now, when you do get your 6-piece set bonus there, you do have a 7th slot free that you could use just one piece of the Amplified Champion set, and that set is great because any slot you use, so it's wrist or your helmet or boots or whatever, it gives you an extra chance to roll a blue quality amplifier, and then that's going to be for tech wizardry. So it just gives you a little free damage here that you wouldn't otherwise get. So you just always make sure that your 7 slots filled with it. Alright, so tacticals here. There's really one that stands out here, and that's the superheated fuel. Now for vanguards, it affects their elemental and kinetic attacks, which is basically everything, literally every attack you use except for high impact bolt, and that's weapon damage, but literally everything else is affected by this. Now something interesting is the power tech tooltip for this tactical says that it affects flame attacks. The Vanguard one says elemental and kinetic, so I'm assuming that the mechanics are the same and that everything for PTs is going to be critting, but just in case it isn't, then that just means Vanguards are double dipping on a tactical that PTs can't. I don't imagine that's the case, but I don't have my PT up to level 75 yet, so if someone actually knows, maybe you can leave something in the comments letting us all know that Vanguard's the only class that double dip in this one. Now, the great thing about this is when you do pop it, you are just an absolute beast. You're just going to be having monster crits all over the place, and it's by far the tactical that offers you the best single target damage. And the great thing is all your AoE attacks are going to be critting as well. All your dot ticks are going to be crits. So the AoE potential, it doesn't look like it on paper. It's also really strong with this tactical too. It probably overshadows even the cleave tactical. So it's really just that good. I suspect this may get nerfed in the future because it's how good it is just really overshadowing all your other choices. It doesn't feel like you have a choice because this is so good. But yeah, you do have some other options, and there are some honorable mentions here as well. Now the first one I will mention is the Life Warden tactical, and that will save your ass. Basically, if you plan on getting tunneled, if you're doing ranked arenas, for example, it's a high likelihood that the other team's going to target you first because you're the squishiest class in most cases. So if you think you're going to be in that position where you're going to be tunneled, you can just equip Life Warden, and when it procs, it's only going to... you won't be able to use it again probably for the next round because it's got a 10-minute rate limit on it, which is pretty brutal. So you can either do your first round where you have this equipped, so if you end up getting tunneled, it'll save your bacon, or you can wait until the second round where if you got tunneled the first round, then you could equip this for the second one and hopefully buy your team a little more time. So it is worth keeping in your inventory here for some situations, but if you're just doing Reg Star kind of stuff, then you probably won't need this. You'd just be going with something else. So explosive weaponry, your cleave tactical. If the 100% crit tactical ever gets nerfed, this would actually be a pretty strong contender for being your next option here because the cleave damage it's real. It's really good. So for some arena comps that specialize in AoE damage or pressure comps, this might be actually a good pick. But the windows you actually get to use this in is pretty small, so for most people it wouldn't be a good pick. But for some niche compositions, this actually is really good. And the other honorable mention here is Flying Fists. You know, it just turns Shock Strike into like a 10-meter ability, and this makes the subtle change into turning Vanguards into a range class. So they don't have to fight in the traditional 4-meter range, and they really didn't have to fight in 4-meter range before, but it just using Shock Strike once every 9 seconds at 4-meter range is the only reason you had to go close, to go within the 10-meter range. But this tactical lets you fight at range the whole time, and for Plasmatech it's kind of nice to have a 10-meter route on a 9-second cooldown. Now this, I did try this out and played around with it for a while, and I did notice it did dramatically increase my ability to kite melee, and it made range classes have a harder time trying to kite me because, if they got away from 4 meters, I didn't care. I could still hit them from range. But I found, in a lot of cases, I still wanted to maintain the 4-meter range, even with this tactical, because if people tried to run away from me, they had a little further to get before they were out of range. So my mileage really varied. Sometimes this tactical was really nice, and other times it felt like a wasted slot just because I was fighting more or less in the 4-meter range. So just to keep things simple for Stims, just to balance your stats out, if you need accuracy or crit, then you're going to want to go with the advanced Curaprax Proficient Stim. It's the level 75 Stim, and if you are over your the crit soft cap, then you're going to want to go with Mastery and Power, and that's the advanced Curaprax Versatile Stim. So that's pretty much your options. So this is the end of the guide. I apologize it took a while to get this one out. It's a combination of real life, and I actually had to do a lot of preparation for this video. I had to make sure, that hopefully the information I was providing was at least correct or pretty close to being correct, and I had to go through several revisions before I came out with the slideshow here that I was happy with. And just a reminder that the information in this guide may change over time. So hopefully not too much has changed. I imagine a lot of the gearing optimization isn't going to change, but possibly some of the gears like tactical and set bonuses might change. So just keep that in mind. And I just want to take a moment to thank everybody for saying how useful this information has been. I appreciate that people are letting me know that they find it helpful and they were thanking me. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you. I do appreciate it, and a great number of you have taken the time to tell me personally, either in-game or on YouTube. So just again, thank you to everybody, and I hope this information is useful. Bye.